Warm welcome to all our viewers to our HR Talk series, where we're going to explore more about the latest trends and insight in human resources. Today, we are going to break down how can emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence can come together to improve HR. Before moving ahead, I just want to introduce to our speaker. We do have again with us Professor Prem Ankurdas, who has almost 28 years of experience in corporate industries. How are you, Professor Das?
I'm good. Thank you for having me once again. I'm really glad.
It's our pleasure to have you again. And, whenever we have you, we have so much of, I would say positive zeal in us that we engage in these kind of topics, and our, viewers also gain so many things from these kind of a session itself. So we have also, lined up a lot of questions which gonna help us to understand how these two tools, that is EI and AI, can enhance, organizational culture, your, HR decisions, or whether it is, employee experience. So without, wasting much of a time, let's dive in. But just before we move ahead, and where I can ask few of our questions which are the audience can also engage into, just want to ask Dr. Das if you can share more about your experience to our audience, because some of the audience are new to the session, prior to which we have already. So what do you, Dr. Das?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm so glad that you have once again invited for this wonderful talk today. Yes, I think everybody should know, at least the speaker. Here you were speaking to Dr. Das, Dr. Primankur Das. I basically have started my career almost 3 decades back. In fact, when I started my career, I was more into software and engineering things. So I was never sure about that what I'll be doing in my career after, 5, 6 years from then. And that was the time when I was more keen of doing something which is very creative. But then later on, I realized that my creativity or my true calling is more into people management. And that is how I got more attracted after completing my second post-graduation, which is basically from London School of Business. And then afterwards, I moved into more specialization with human resource, because gradually I entered into the the people connect thing. And then I felt that the secret of any business, it's not exactly the strategy, but the people who are the core of any business function. And the more we understand them, the more we try to explore them, I think that is how the the performance or the effectiveness of the business really comes. So this is I went on doing, and gradually I got a chance to work with so many different kind of businesses, starting from the IT, then gradually I was with healthcare for a longer period, and then got into again a different kind of generic businesses like automobile. Then I was with in the present last company, I was again with the healthcare and mining. And then the present company also is a kind of a mix of different businesses. It's a rather a conglomerate. So I think all these different experiences has only taught me one thing, that one should be very much resilient to adapt and adopt. I think that is the key thing for any person at any level of his career. So if you are meeting Dr. Das today, it's basically all about adaptation and adoption. So I have always been trying to adapt myself with the new technology, with the new things, new knowledge. I think nowadays the generation Z, as you say, they are very fast, and I think they are very smart. They are picking up technology so fast. In our times, we were not like that. So we basically were being introduced to computer, I think, when I was leaving high school. And that was the time when computers came into being, and people were talking about that we have to be learning the programming and whatnot. And then today, when we are talking about this session, when we are talking about artificial intelligence, how it is going to impact our life, and at the same time, when I see the younger generation, they don't think a lot. They really just do the action. So they don't even have the time. They don't even have the time to even listen to so much of lectures and knowledge. They say that, okay, tell me what exactly the next thing. So I think that is where I see the difference, but I really enjoy that. At the same time, I could see that the things are happening so fast, at the blink of your eye, things are getting, launched in the market. But the art is all about how we are going to drive the wisdom, how we are going to use this intelligence in the right way, so that
Right.
we do not go towards a disaster, we do not go towards a very dead end. Rather, we should use our knowledge in the right direction. So Dr. Das is all about, you can say, more about wisdom, being more in a adoptive, in an adaptive and an adoption process. We have been always trying to amalgamate both the things together. So that's in brief about me.
Wow, that's such an inspiring experience you have, and I'm sure that audience which are with us connected, and they'll be connected to your and gonna be impactful on their journey even. Uh, you know, uh, Dr. Das, before moving ahead, I just want to brief a little bit to our audience which have just joined us in this first session for them. Just wanted to tell that in our last session where we already discussed about the impact of advanced HR tech and the AI on the HR practices. This is what we covered in our last session, and Dr. Das shared all his thoughts on how AI is currently impacting the HR field. So in today's fast changing workplace where combining AI and the emotional intelligence is the key factor. So we will say that we know that integration of AI is both exciting also as well as it is challenging. So the connection between emotional intelligence and AI is such a crucial in this journey of transition that a lot of people say, where we know also that AI can help us automate our tasks, like while emotional intelligence ensure us to make thoughtful or be make people more focused in their decisions. So that's what the difference I can see in AI and EI, but together they create a balance, I would say, helping us to use this kind of technology smartly without losing much of a human touch. So that's what my feedback, or I would say that's what I know about AI and EI. But still there's long to hear from yours, and also that is what my think is. But I would like to know from Professor Das that how do you see this relationship between the emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence, which is involving in the workplace? uh, can they truly complement each other, or there is some inherent conflicts that need to be addressed? Just looking forward for some point on this from your end.
It's a smart question. It's $1 million question, which everybody is trying to answer.
Right.
And I think you already gave the answer to some extent in your, the question. But still, I would like to take you to the basics of emotional intelligence, that how all these things started, and even why we are talking about the relationship between EI and artificial intelligence, or how we call as AI today. So if I go back into the, the ancient, civilization, everything, whatever we have is basically nothing but experience. And that is how we really learn things. And that is where we see the importance of experiential learning.
Right.
So you imagine that when people were living the life of a caveman, and first time they have seen the thunderstorm or a striking of a thunder, or the first time when they might have discovered the fire, what amount of excitement they might have experienced. And you think about the first time when they have moved on from a cultivation, or they have first time planted something and they have seen that it can grow. So how they have moved from being a hunting culture to a growing culture. So I think in every step of the civilization or of the evolution, we have come across some experiences. And these experiences lie somewhere at the core of our human existence.
Right.
So whatever we actually experience and whatever we try to define with our innate knowledge or whatever our instincts we have, we sometimes try to always justify things with our knowledge. And that is what is the, the pursuit of knowledge. So, of course, I really appreciate when you put up a question like this. So, before that, one should know that what exactly the emotional intelligence, and I'm sure like everybody nowadays are reading more about emotional intelligence, and particularly after this pandemic, people are getting more careful about things and how things can become sensitive and more impactful in their life. So emotional intelligence actually lies at the core of our existence, and that is very core with our experience. So all these things, whichever I have said, it's related to experience. What you are, what I am, it is nothing without emotional being or emotional quotient, right? So if we are different from the robots or the machines, it is because of this emotional intelligence. We may have a lot of technology. We may have the best of the technology, which is very fast, agile, and precise, but it lacks the emotion, or it may be learning emotions in a course of time. We could see that there are machines which can even have emotions. But what exactly we have to understand that they are not at a competition at any level. They are rather a connection of heart and hard drive. So if we say that there is a heart, then there is a hard drive, which basically can feed the data, which can be more precise in analyzing the data. But if you really understand emotional intelligence, then definitely you have to understand that it comes, as we all know, that there are 5 important ingredients, which is knowing about yourself, and that is where the self-awareness comes.
Right.
You not only know yourself, you know about others around you, you know about their emotional being. You need to know how to regulate your emotion. That's all about self-management. You need to also have an understanding of something called as motivation, that what are people's motivation, why people should be even talking to us, why people should be interacting with us, why they should be gelling with us. And then we should know that what exactly make people move, and that's empathy. And that's how you see a small baby when cry. We know that we have to do something by which we can attract that baby, and then we can pacify so that she doesn't cry or he doesn't cry.
Right.
So I think that's all about empathy, and how we exercise the empathy, that is more important, which a machine cannot do.
No.
Right? And the fifth thing, which is really very important, and that is about our social awareness, which is really important, that the place, the society where we exist. So I think these 5 things we really are very important when we every time we are talking or discussing about emotional intelligence, emotional quotient.
Right.
Now, if I really talk about the coexistence, it is something which is a reality, and it has already come in. That era has already stepped in. And we are probably at that first level of that era when we are even talking about this relationship. But this relationship has always been, we have not realized that. The reason we have not been using artificial intelligence. Now, since we have got into an age where AI is getting into each and every sphere of our life, so we have to understand that AI is basically there to make us more fast. It is there
Right.
to make us more agile. It is going to give us the information and the bridging the gap between logic and human. So if I really say AI is basically the driver of the car, and AI is probably that fast racing car which is going to take you to the places.
Right.
So let's stick to the strength of processing data and leave the empathy to human being. So human beings have to drive that car and take it to the proper destination. I think this is how we should think of complementing each other, and not rather thinking that there are some conflicts, because every, I think, black cloud has a silver lining. So maybe even we are talking about this as a competition. So nowhere there is a competition. This AI has been rather created to complement us, so that we can delve more into those serious and those creative things which we are always wishing, or which you're always willing to do so. I think this is what I can say.
Right. So true. So true. I mean, as you mentioned, these things like empathy and other things, I mean, these things are being considered in the organizational, behavior and everything. So if I say that, AI has taken over more and more tasks, but I still think there is something which is, or I would ask you, like, is it really very important for HR professionals to grow their emotional intelligence? I mean, how can they, balance out AI also and EI, to lead better decisions in the workplace? specifically for HR professional, I'm asking.
I think that's a very good question. That's a very good point which you have raised, that why HR and what is the need of the HR to even become emotionally more intelligent or even think of it.
Right.
So I think today, if I really see the present work culture, it is really a cutthroat competition everywhere we could see, and I'm sure like there are too much of untalkable stress, which people even don't even be vocal about it. Sometimes people are vocal, and when you see it, that it's probably the tip of the iceberg, I can say.
Right.
And when we are dealing with human beings, we cannot really think of doing anything without understanding the factor which is emotional intelligence. Maybe I can give you a very simple example, that I can use a software which is AI driven to do a screening of the CVs, but ultimately I have to understand that what exactly are the human value of that particular candidate. So if I'm talking about integrity, if I'm talking about the sincerity, if I'm talking about the other human qualities, which maybe a machine cannot judge or a software cannot judge. So that is where you have to be emotionally intelligent. And sometimes it is really important. I can give another good example here. Many times I have seen that, particularly when we are using this, the happiness softwares, which are going to check that how the human moods keep on changing. So maybe an AI can raise a flag and tell you that, okay, your employee is not happy. But what is the next thing? That is what the HR should be emotionally intelligent to reach out to that employee and understand that why the employee is not happy. Take example that there is a performance management system which is completely AI driven or AI generated, which can do the entire thing correctly, which can show that the performance of an employee is going down. Perhaps the employee is not taking leave for a longer time, or the person is working for so long in his particular project. But these signals can be derived into a solution when the HR are emotionally intelligent enough to do the proper decision making. So AI can show you the different, the nuances. They can show you the different, the signals. They can raise flag. But
Mhm.
how exactly those problems can be tackled? Any employee, suppose, is underperforming, okay, for continuous period or for some given say time, but how exactly we are realizing the problem, how we're empathetic toward an employee. We cannot just go by the data and say that, okay, you are not a good performer, so you basically are terminated from the company. But how we are trying to engage that employee, that is where an HR has to be emotionally intelligent to know how to connect, how to really understand and try to dig deeper into the problem and try to understand that where the problem lies. And I think this is the only secret which can bring the disengaged employee into an engagement. And unless and until the HRs are really becoming smart enough and they are not training themselves in EI, it is very difficult to adopt any kind of technology or any smart software which is AI driven and really create some kind of a big solution or maybe bring some change. So of course, in the first place, the HRs should be very smart enough in developing their emotional intelligence, and that doesn't happen in a day. It needs a proper planning. It needs a proper exposure and sensitization. Because if I go by the Veda, here I'll just say a small thing. There are two things. One is para vidya and apara vidya. So there are four actually faculties of our school. That is dharma, karma, and moksha. So dharma, karma, and whatever we get actually, but the moksha is basically not something which is taught in our life, which basically comes with experience and emotion. So unless and until you develop that thing, you cannot expect someone to be emotionally intelligent.
Right.
So whatever we have learned in life, whatever basically you talk about, the education we are getting in our university school, so that is not going to give you that emotional intelligence. That comes with life, that comes with the experience of society,
True,
right?
true. like as you mentioned that by introducing it as a subject in colleges or something, not gonna help it up. Like I'll just give an example of myself. Like I've already done MBA in HR and marketing both. It's long way back. Still, I remember some of the subjects that we have read in HR, like organization behavior, strategic management, business ethics, and all. But nothing was related to something to emotional intelligence. AI is also now introduced in a lot of colleges, and now it has been introduced in schools also. But
Yeah,
something like emotional intelligence is nothing like it can be like a period subject that you can just
true.
read it and grasp it up. It is something which is talking about practicality. You go out in the corporate environment. There you faces a lot of challenges with the employees itself being as an HR. That's how with an experience I guess you learn all these things.
True.
Yeah, that's what I think about from this. But still, like, how can we add this, emotional intelligence, which make AI-driven tools better for HR and leadership decisions? So, if you like, you already have so many examples you have told us, but still, are there any real life examples or situations which you have gone through and you can share with us and that audience?
Certainly, certainly. I have faced this. Means I continuously face this thing in my, I mean, in a daily day-to-day practice. As I continuously meet different people, I think it's almost like the changing templates. But
Right,
what is more important when I meet every time every single character, I just try to understand their nature, their empathy, and their level of emotional intelligence. And by doing that, every time when I actually try to analyze a character, I always try to understand that what exactly are the metrics same for the last person is not the same for this person. So there is no such given point of time you can say that, okay, I have mastered all the metrics on the basis of which I will say that, okay, these metrics are really enough. Because a machine can be fed with or programmed with certain metrics. Okay, these are the metrics on the basis of which you can analyze a particular person. Okay. So
right,
now what happens if you really are not blending the emotional intelligence with your the decision making capacity or the AI driven decision making tools, you would end up doing some judgment which can may not be taking you in the right direction. So if I really say that, as I give an example of a race car, so it's a very fast, precise, and efficient, but without an emotionally intelligent driver, it could end up in the wrong lane.
right,
So I think what we have to do is, I basically have faced this situation, particularly when I'm doing performance appraisal. Say I actually, I can find certain data that, okay, these people are not performing and they are basically, down on some areas. For example, when I try to measure their, the people handling. Okay, so
right.
the manager has been very aggressive in achieving the sales, but when it comes to people handling, he is getting very less score. So why it is so? It is because the person is having so much of stress on him, or he is so much overloaded that he is not able to manage. Or when it comes to work delegation, we find that a person is ending up doing a lot of tasks, or sometimes even multitasking. So that is why his uh, managerial skill is again getting low. So of course the software can raise a red flag and say that, okay, you have to give him low, and that's why his performance graph will go low. But that is where the HR or the line manager has to have that human element present in them, so that they can understand that why that person is going low, because perhaps the person has never been trained on the EI part.
Right.
So it is not that someone, as you rightly said, that this is not being taught in schools and university, which is not covered in our what you call as aparavidya. So that is not covered. So this is paravidya. So this
Right,
is something which actually has to be learned.
right,
And till now, in our society, we have no such university or school where people can take initiative in bringing emotional intelligence in the daily life, unless and until they sensitize themselves. So the best way to do that, what I always do whenever I'm with my leaders and the business managers, I say that you first try to understand yourself, and that is self-awareness. If you don't understand yourself, you cannot realize others.
Right.
So, sometimes we have to come into a situation that whether we should fight or flight. So, I don't know that it's a situation where I have to react. So many times I have seen that a performance of an employee has gone bad and the manager is shouting at him and then the person is not able to reply.
Right.
He has become very timid. So I think that is the time when we should have our empathy to realize that why his or her performance is going down. So probably there are some other reasons which could be very deep into that person's life, which could be deep into that person's health issue, or could be
Right.
into the social existence of that person. I think all these elements should be involved more with the this kind of AI driven software. And the more we have such things in practice which can measure our sentiment, you
Right.
imagine that how exactly. So, nowadays people talk about algorithms. So, these AI driven softwares have just been built on algorithms. So, now you may have got an algorithm which can measure that how many times the person is going to the social media, how many times that person is really going offline or online, or beyond the working hours, how much the time person is going online. So these are the areas, this value, this data has to be fetched in the right manner, and then we should analyze it in a more human way, not in a mechanical way. So that is how I think the blending or the incorporation of emotional intelligence can effectively happen.
Right. So you say like a lot of case studies, if we do, like, can help us out in reaching what we are looking for.
Certainly. Certainly, I can give you a very unique case study, which is in fact from my life. I will just not tell the name of these characters. There
Okay.
were two persons in my past organization, and they were very good friends. One was from the HR, and the other was from the finance.
Right.
Now, what happened is like they joined the company at the same time, and they were equally talented and bright. After a point of time, we have seen that they were just having only formal chats and they were no more good friends. And then later on, when I got a chance, it was not again a formal meet, but informally, I just tried to understand from them that why exactly you are distancing and is there any such problem or any conflict going around. Then they said, the finance guy said that I really do not like people to give so much of importance to my friend because who is HR, and I see that everybody is talking about him and as if I am not doing anything for the organization. And the same I've seen even from the leaders. So I realized that it's not just, so he's finding that he's getting less importance. So I think in that situation, I then explained that fellow that say it's not that you are not important. Maybe your contribution is invisible to many of the workers. They don't know what you are doing for the organization, which of course the leaders know. But being an HR, he has got an easy contact point with most of the employees, and that's why he develops an emotional bond with people. And whenever they see him, I think they actually get more excited. And rather, you being finance, they are not really understanding that how exactly it involves or impacts their life. So I think there are many such case studies which we can go through. Of course, there are live case studies in front of our eyes. I think we just have to immerse ourselves into that so that we can find those important elements or the nuggets out of it, which can be very important for our learning.
Right. That's true. That's true. I mean, these kind of case studies for sure gonna help us, and if for any HR in any organization would help them out.
True.
Uh, Dr. Das, like AI, can help, with us with for both front, like for personal also, as well as the professional growth. But how can it, support building, emotional intelligence, specifically if I ask for leaders and the team managers? So, any practical example if you can share with our audience, that would be very great.
Mm, I think this is a very tricky, but at the same time, it's an exciting one. So I think AI can offer a feedback data on at an interpersonal level,
Right.
and even suggest that AI-based learning pathways. But what exactly one has to understand that how we can nudge the leaders and help them adopt the better emotional practices,
Right.
which is like a coach who can always tell them or suggest them that what they should do while they are really going to take up any particular decision, or they're handling a critical situation, or
Right.
sometimes, even they are having a low sentiment. I've seen, I can give you, maybe it can be controversial. I don't want to get into that. So, but rather I can say that many leaders I have seen that sometimes they are taking things at a rage of, fit of maybe a kind of a fury, and then they're later on contemplating that why I took the decision in that way, and then later on say that, okay, I was a bit impulsive and I shouldn't have even said that. And then later on they contemplate for that. So I think AI related software, if people can imbibe in their daily working style, like the way we have been using Siri or Alexa, we
Right.
should be using that kind of software on a daily basis, which can be even in the organizer, or a kind of a software which can be even in our mobile app, which can tell us that, see, today you have taken up so many meetings, back to back meetings, so you have to check on your emotion, that how is it, are you really in a mood to go for the next meeting? Hey, your empathy has to be taken care of. So I think something like that, which can really be very meaningful, because I have seen my CFOs, or particularly I have seen a lot of, the bosses and the chairmans, they are so busy, they're taking back to back meetings, maybe they're having marathon meetings, but are they really in that mental well-being? Sometimes they are completely burnt out, and they are basically pushing for the next meeting, and what you can expect out of that meeting, how much creative they would be, or how much productive those meetings are going to be. It is just going to be a tick on the checkbox.
Right.
So if this is what people want to do, I'm sure, like, then there is no further suggestions. I'll zip myself. But if you want me to say, then of course I will tell you that there has to be a kind of a mentor or a coach, even for those busy people who are really the leaders. And I mean, the people who are at the very top positions, very important people, they should have someone who can guide them. And at least someone can tell them, see, this is not the way. And that is why, if you go back into the Indian mythology or ancient scriptures, you have read about Chanakya, who was a wonderful coach and mentor, isn't it? So I think such mentors are not there nowadays. And even if those mentors are there, they're undervalued or undermined somewhere. So now, at least with the gift of AI, such things can be there in
Easily.
our daily applications.
Yeah, some of the practical example I even do have, like I've read somewhere that AI powered apps are there, which can track and analyze the stress level, which helps the leaders to become
So
more aware of their emotional state, or how these might impact their leadership. So there are these kind of apps even, and even
I think the apps are there, but there is always a kind of disbelief among people where people don't
right,
use. So I think the more you sensitize yourself, that you start taking this as a serious chapter and not
right,
just a talking element. So I know that PMAPS is working on such a particular project, and they have already evolved such a wonderful software which can measure your sentiment, and which can also tell you about your empathy and all. So I think such things have to be brought more into practice. And
right,
when people are really starting to believe in that, and they're starting to use that technology, then only they can feel. Until the
right.
time they don't use it, I think they cannot experience it. So it comes back to the experience again.
Mhm.
Right.
So, so what about emotional insight? Like, AI can analyze, like, for example, teen sentiments, through like a lot of where social media is there, through social media to give their leaders, insight about their own team morale or emotional anything like, emotional climate which they have. So I think that this helps the leaders to understand and address their teams, whatever necessity or needs more effectively? Do you think that it is there?
I think this is a 50-50 thing. It's not necessary that always
So
those signals are really enough for them to understand. Of
okay,
course, nowadays the social media, since it's very active, we are talking
active,
about it.
right, right,
But it's a kind of a 50-50 thing. So, in some places, in some scenario, I'm sure, Ms. Mitra, you will not find that kind of uh, cohesive, or I should say supportive systems or
Right.
supportive community where people are even accepting it.
Right. That's true. That's true. And if we talk about the personalized feedbacks, so do you think that AI tools can analyze our communication style? Like, for example, they can provide the feedback, like our leaders, how our leaders interact basically with their teams. I mean, can they access the tone of the emails, or
Oh, yes.
do we have any
Yes.
meetings? So,
Certainly, certainly. In fact, I have come across one recent, I think, an application that which basically, judge your tone. That however, I'm
right,
using it for like my, voice recording and all. But it tells me from that particular audio that
right,
whether I'm happy or not, or whether I'm in the right mood to go for, whether I should modulate my voice more
yes,
so that I can really become more empathetic, or I can be more, I think, emotional while I present that thing. So it can be a sales pitch. It can be while I'm talking to my junior. It can be even while I'm talking to my customer. And
right,
particularly those who are more into customer centric business, they should take it more seriously, because many a times I've seen the business leaders say that we are a customer centric company, but unfortunately or fortunately, the business leader, they are not going directly to handle the customer. It is the
yeah,
people who are dealing with the customer. So if in the very first place we are not in the proper emotional tone with the workers, so how we expect that those people are going to serve the customers of the business in
true.
the right emotion?
That's
So I think this kind of things are still on an experimental level.
right.
Yes, we definitely have so much of technology and AI-driven softwares are there in the market, which can really set the right example for us.
Mm-hmm.
But the learning is going on, and more sensitization can happen so that more and more people can experience this thing, and then we can find the holistic development which you're talking about.
Right, right.
So this is how it can only happen.
Yeah, that's true. Dr. Das, there are like numerous of methods to identify the training needs in today's workforce. So,
Mhm.
is there can you just elaborate more on how EI and AI can be leveraged together to just strategize or the effective employee learning or their development, or is there any wellness programs are there?
See, I think the best thing is there is a particular practice. I don't know how many companies are really adopting. There is something called the Johari window.
Okay,
So which basically helps us to go and find the blind spot in a person and find that the darkest side of a particular character. So
okay,
every human being always live in a circle of security. We do not want to come out of the security, but the moment you are actually brought into that unknown zone, you are always, taken off guarded, and you are not really prepared for that. So this particular process, this Johari window, is kind of a model, a kind of a personality test, which helps you to get audited by a software. In fact, it's kind of a concept which is now fitted now in the software, which helps people to analyze that how we can understand that unknown part of our character, which has never been audited by anyone,
okay,
which is even not known to me, right? So this is one. Second, I think there is another model which is very much in practice nowadays, which can assess someone's sentiment. That if I'm really going to take up an assignment, that whether the person is in the right mood or not. So I think this kind of feedback driven softwares are very much in practice, but personally I have not used that, to be very honest. But I have read about it, and I think that the more we involve this kind of software while we are doing the induction or while we are recruiting some employee in the company, particularly, the PMAPs have got the screening software where you can judge the person's sentiment and all, and also for, the daily day-to-day exercise, how the employees are engaged or not, because an engaged task force is every company's dream. But in order to achieve that, we need to see that how the employees are emotionally engaged, because engagement is not about only giving them some task and some reward or some kind of exercises, but also have to ensure that how one can read that. For example, nowadays we have got automated email.
yeah,
Okay, so people are getting emails from a particular company, but how those emails are having the human element in that, that is important. I can get a promotional mail from say XYZ company. Maybe PMAPS is sending me some promotional elements, but
Right.
I will read that, but I will only get engaged as a human when I find that human element.
Right.
So that blending can only happen not but just by an algorithm, but of course someone has to be behind that entire process, which absolutely has to be a human being who has to use the intelligence, that what human element I can bring in,
Right.
right? So
Right.
that is what is very important here. In this case, I can give you an example. I'm bringing up one of my creation, which is in the form of a book, which is the journey of uh, EI to AI. So it is going to come in the form of a book, and I'm sure uh, people would be at least getting a chance to read that, which is coming in a few months.
Yeah.
And that in that particular book, I have tried to mention that how the AI and AI coexist together. So it's not something where we can find a conflict. We can rather find they're marrying each other and they are going to stay with us. It's amount of intelligence which we have to feed and sensitize ourselves so that we get more matured in using it. And we know that how much distance we should maintain. That is also very important.
Important. Right. That is true. And as you mentioned that you're going to just launch a book. So, is there any tentative date being decided yet? Because our for
I
sure.
think it's going to come up in 2025, New
Okay.
Year. So
Okay.
it will be coming up either in January. So that is so far like the tentative, the information or the forecast which I've got from the publisher.
Okay. So our all the audience can follow you on your LinkedIn, and then that's how they can connect you. Like, I mean, any
Absolutely.
update regarding your book or something, right? That's
Sure,
what I can do. That's
sure.
good. Wow, that's the good news. Which I mean, I'm happy to have this launching news on our podcast today itself. Apart from this, Dr. Das, like as I said, that our audience are HR practitioners, they're the HR leaders and all. So for our HR leaders who are hesitant about integrating AI into their practices, what advice would you offer them? I mean, how can they be more ensure themselves that they can cultivate this EI workforce while embracing AI itself? So what kind of suggestion would you give them?
I think, well, in the very first place, we have to understand that emotional intelligence is always helping people to recognize their, you know, their own existence and to recognize the early sign of burnout
Right,
before they become a full-blown crisis. Because in many cases, we are just at a pre-burnout stage, but we don't know how to break the chain.
right,
But if you know when exactly you should stop, it's the time that you should pull the lever that, yes, it's now, I'm done, and I should really stop here. So that is what exactly people have to understand with experience and with continuous practice. You may have a software today, but if you don't know how to use it, then there is no use of it. It's about being attuned to the various subtleties in behavior. For example, I may have a lot of meetings, but how exactly I should be managing that entire schedule? That is how I have to. Sometimes I may be low in my enthusiasm. I might find that my morale is going down, and I have to rush for a business meeting or some interview. But how exactly AI can help in understanding or tracking those metrics that which can bring up my productivity? So sometimes my productivity can dip, but how exactly I can help in bringing it up? That is what is the human intelligence or emotional intelligence. Sometimes I find that there are too much of absenteeism in my company. People are really leaving or they're resigning, but I cannot that time rely just on a technology. I have to be equally competent to take a judgment or take a decision understanding that how exactly I have to use the tool. A tool can, of course, raise a flag. It can give me certain pointers, some data, but it's all about AI, how you diagnose the symptom, and AI will prescribe the cure. So it's a kind of a doctor-patient relationship. So if I say that AI is basically your tool to diagnose the situation in a much easier way, in a swift and more agile manner, okay, so now HR are now the doctors who are basically going to use this tool for bringing the cure or bringing the solution. So without HR, I think these tools are again useless.
Yeah, right. That's true. That's true. So, finally, if what are your top, 3 takeaways for our HR leaders, on integrating AI as well as EI to foster more of the engagement in effective workforce?
I think the first takeaway will be that complement and don't compete, because we should not keep this thing in our mind that AI is here to replace us or AI is going to make us obsolete. So we should think that how we can complement this new AI thing. EI and AI are the two sides of the same coin. So how we are going to process the data and how exactly we are going to implement them for the betterment and the welfare of the people, that is where we should concentrate. If the artificial intelligence is helping me to get a kind of a happiness meter or something like with judge someone's sentiment or his particular mood, but I should be intelligent enough in knowing that how exactly I'll be utilizing those information in preparing the next training plan. I can have a training need analysis report, but if I don't know that which training is going to help my employee in elevating his level, his emotional level, his personal level, so I think I cannot do anything. So if the first takeaway is complement and don't compete, right? Second takeaway, which I would always like to suggest, is that automation is needed, but automation plus empathy. So whatever you do, always try to make sure that let AI handle what it does at its best. But we should be always watchful that how the emotional energy we can bring in all human interactions, which matters. Whether we are taking the first interview of the candidate or it is the final interview of the candidate when we are going to give the offer letter and welcome and onboard that employee, how much emotional energy we are putting into that process, and if we are not aware, I think we are not going to do the right thing. So this is what one has to do. And the final or the third takeaway which I will say is personalization. AI can give you a lot of scalable insight, but AI will ensure those insights are personalized, they are relevant, and also emotionally impactful to people. So every time you may have, say, a kind of a procedure or a kind of a screening method, which can definitely give you some wow data. But how to really utilize this wow data or this aha factor will come only when you know how to make it more emotionally appealing to people.
Right.
Right. So the 3 takeaways I summarize: complement, don't compete, because that is going to stay here.
Right.
Second, automation plus empathy. And the third is personalization is the key. So whatever you do, you should always ensure that you are personalizing it. So these are the 3 takeaways I will give today.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Das, for the takeaways for our audience. As I said, they are the HR leaders, and I'm sure from this session they have gained a lot of information. And beside that, as I mentioned, they can follow you on your LinkedIn, whatever else information they wanted. And we all are eager to have your book as soon as it gets launched. Thank you so much again for sharing all the insights regarding the integration of EI and AI in HR. And I think now it's pretty clear that a balanced approach can lead more engagement and effective workforce. So we appreciate your time and expertise again today, and looking forward for more and more these kind of sessions, which gonna help us and our audience itself.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
it's really my pleasure.
Sure, sure. And for our listeners, I would say that if you have any questions related to the session, do share with us through this email or WhatsApp. And if you want to connect to Dr. Das, we'll share his LinkedIn ID. You can connect to him on there, and you can reach out to him anytime. And we'll come up with another session with an interesting topic for sure. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.